All right, guys, Mokwheel's back with their latest commuter e-bike, and this is called the Tarmac. And while the name itself implies pavement, there's a lot of new things going on with this that we don't always see in the commuter e-bike space. Things like 29-inch wheels in the wheel set, where we usually see a 27.5, and I'll get into why that matters here in just a bit. And then we also have, instead of a coil fork up front, we have an air fork, which also we'll talk about kind of the benefits and pros and cons over a coil fork. But on top of that, we have full commuter perks like front-to-back lighting, fenders, and racks, and a promised up to 60 miles of range. So how does it all execute in the real world? Well, ride with me and let's find out in this deep dive of the new Mokwheel Tarmac. All right, guys, let's talk about some basics on the Mokwheel Tarmac. This is a Class 3 commuter, so capable of speeds of 28 miles an hour. Now, in full disclosure, when I unlocked the speed on this to get to 28, I was able to creep up past that about 29, even touching into 30 miles an hour, so it's a little bit peppier than they advertise. Now, this is UL 2271 certified on the battery. The price is $18.99. And when it comes to weight, they say it weighs 66 pounds. I always throw them up on the scale, and I got 67.2 the way you see it right now with pedals, racks, fenders. So we'll just say 66, 67 is a pretty fair estimate when you think about the weight of the pedals or a rack or something like that. Now, in terms of colors, this is Phantom Black. It's a nice kind of matte black finish. Anybody who's a fan of matte black will definitely like this paint job on here. I think it looks really good. But if you don't like black, they also have what they call Stormy Blue as well as Pine Green. And each of those are going to be in a matte finish, and they all three look very nice. Now, frame sizing wise, this is where things get a little bit confusing to me. So this is the large frame, but there's also a standard. Now, the standard frame fits from 5'5" up to 6'6". Now, the large goes from 5'7" up to 6'7". So we only have a 1-inch variable between the two frame sizes. Now, the reason I found that interesting is because the standover height on this large frame is 32 inches. So if you have a 32-inch inseam, you can stand over this, and that's about the limit. But the standard frame below it goes to a 31-inch inseam. So it's only 1 inch lower, 1 inch difference in reach, 1 inch difference in the overall bike frame geometry. So I would just rather see the second frame size, that smaller frame size, accommodate a wider range. So for going from 5'5" to 6'6", and then the large going from 6'6" to, or 5'7" to 6'7", we just really don't get a lot of variability in those two size differences. So I'd prefer to see a couple inches smaller on the smaller frame. That way you can get riders south of 5'5". Maybe people 5'1", 5'2" wouldn't be left out. But nonetheless, those are the two frame sizes. This is a large, and I'm 5'11", so this is supposed to fit between, again, 5'7" to 6'7". And at 5'11", I felt like the bike felt a little bit big underneath me, which I don't say often. A lot of that has to do with the 29-inch wheels and just the overall large frame design. Now, there's some good news and bad news there. The good news is if you are up on that 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", that kind of uniquely high or uniquely tall range of the rider fit, a lot of times I don't think bikes do fit you as well as brands estimate. But in this case, if you are a tall rider, 6'5", 6'6", I actually think you could make this work, and it would actually be a comfortable bike. So that half is going to be definitely a solid point for those of you on the taller side. Now, in terms of things like the rest of the numbers on this frame geo, we have a 32-inch inseam, like I pointed out, 47 inches from front hub to wheel hub, and then we have about 8 inches of adjustability here in the saddle, and you have a 17-inch reach up top, but I gotta say, that's adjustable stem of 90 degrees. You can adjust it, slam it forward, or bring it all the way up, and kind of really change that reach depending on how you have that stem. So the 17-inch reach is kind of just a nominal number that definitely can move based on how you adjust that stem up top. Now, the max payload on this bike is 350 pounds. And when it comes to wheels and tires, this is the first deviation or first bold step I'd say that Mokwheel took. Many brands right now, in fact, almost all of them I can think of outside of true mountain bikes, run 27.5-inch wheels and tires for their commuter bikes. Now, 29-inch wheels, you might be thinking, well, what's it matter? It's just an extra 1.5 inches in the wheel diameter. And in some terms, it doesn't matter, but in other terms, it does. So, for example, if you take a small wheel and you roll over a curb, that curb can feel very large for that small wheel. If you take the same side curb and you take a bigger wheel and roll it over, it becomes an easier obstacle for that wheel. So when you have a larger rolling diameter wheel, you're just going to be able to go over road imperfections, bumps, curbs, roots, pavement transitions. Those things are just going to feel a little bit easier and a little bit smoother on a larger wheel. That's why you see them on things like mountain bikes, because when they got to go over rocks and rough terrain, those larger wheels make it rolling over just that much easier for the bike and easier on your body, which translate really just an easier, smoother ride. It's a long-winded way of saying that it's just better to ride that way. Now, on top of that, we have CST Preston tires, and they're wrapped in a fairly aggressive commuter tread, which I like because that's going to give me some traction on gravel roads, on wet days, without being full-on commuter slicks. They're kind of a mild MTB, almost a bridge between commuter and mountain bike tire, which I think is a nice sweet spot for this bike. Now, we also have the PSI rating on these tires. These CST Prestons is between 40 and 65 PSI. I run on the very low end of that, right around the low 40s, because I like to get a little extra cushion out of my tires. But you can go as high as 65 PSI for that really quick rolling, but you will feel more road vibrations when you go to a max PSI like that. Now, in terms of racks and fenders, we got everything you'd want for commuters. So we have front to back fenders. They are plastic fenders, but I will say they did a really good job in the mounting points of all of them. They all have several mounting points to attach them and anchor them to make them not vibrate, not rattle, and not shake loose easily, which is a nice way of doing them when you put these on a bike. Sometimes one or two mounting points can just equate to a rattly fender, but these are nice in place and nice and secure where they're at. Now, on top of that, we have a rear rack with integrated taillights, brake lights, and turn signals, which is really cool. And then you have this nice modular rack system up top. You also have front to back lighting. So we have a fully proprietary headlight built into the frame up front. We have a tail light that also has a brake light feature and turn signals in this rear rack. And then we also have these nice seat stay integrated tail lights and brake lights as well. So you really have full lighting when you're commuting in the cities, better visibility. And on top of that, you also have reflective strips on these tires that if a car was to see you from the side with their headlights on, they're going to see those big rolling reflective lines going past them. It's just extra visibility. You don't have lights coming out the side, but when you have these reflectors, just makes it easier for you to be seen in low light conditions. Now, on top of that, we have some extra bottle mounts here for things like water bottle cages or some other accessory. But really, if you were going to commute with this bike front to back, I'd say it's absolutely loaded to the gills for giving you that true commuter experience with everything you're going to need. So let's talk about things like muscle and power on the Mokwheel Tarmac, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to know, is the bike I'm going to get fast or is it slow? What's the deal? So you're going to get a little of both. So this has a 750 watt rear hub motor that has both a cadence and torque sensor built into it. Now this motor can peak it up to 920 watts and it pushes 75 Newton meters of torque. Now those numbers equate to a ride that is a little of both when I say reserved and speedy. I've noticed on this bike, the way the torque sensor is programmed, you're going to get on the lower side of PAS levels on the slower speeds, so sub 15 miles an hour, 0 to 15 miles an hour. It's very reserved power, very reserved acceleration, but kind of on the higher end, once you start pushing through those teens up into the 20s, it gets really powerful and speedy. So it's a nice mix of having low-end relaxed rides and then high-end speedy rides. And when we talk about range numbers that I got when I tested it, all that's going to make a lot more sense in just a second. Now, beyond this motor having a cadence and torque sensor, I will say the way I read the marketing paperwork and the product page that you go when you buy the bike, I read it as having a torque and cadence sensor that you can switch between, and that's what I thought I was getting when I rode the bike, but it turns out it just has a torque and cadence sensor that is hard programmed into it. You can't select between both, but what that does is give you more of a cadence sensor on those high-end punchier speeds and more of a torque sensor in the lower ends on those relaxed speeds. And again, the range numbers will help drive that home here in just a moment. Now, when it comes to the battery, we've got a 48 volt battery, pretty beefy. It's got 15 amp hours, giving us 720 watt hours of power. Now, this is UL 2271 certified, and it does come with a set of keys to remove it for off the bike charging or storage. So I'll show you how that works now. So right here, we have a set of keys that comes with the bike. I'll put them on this drive side key slot here, turn them, and you'll see the front cover can pop out, and the battery will drop itself halfway out, which is kind of a nice feature. You do have this kind of an alloy, it's a metal battery cover. You will see some chips on here because as I put it in the bed of a truck on those truck tailgate racks, it does obviously push up on that, and if there's any imperfections on your tailgate pad or the clips on it, it was rubbing this. It wasn't a defect from the battery cover, but more of a defect from just the way it was designed. And if I put it on a tailgate, or if you have a tailgate truck, just keep that in mind. I might even start removing this when I put it on a tailgate. Just something to note if you own the bike. Now, it does drop halfway out, as you can see. So I'm going to push this release lever, and and that's going to allow the rest of the battery to come out. As you can see, this is a tight fit when the wheel is straight, so if you want more room, you can just turn this wheel outwards, and that's going to help you get it in and out a little bit easier. Now, this is UL 2271 safety certified, as well as a range estimate of what they say is 50 to 60 miles. Now, I kind of always do a range test on these bikes depending on the type of bike, and this one I thought deserved both a minimum assistance, so eco mode, and then a maximum assistance range test, kind of on that turbo or PAS5 mode. And what I found was, because we have that lower relaxed ride on the low end, we got a lot more efficiency. So that torque sensor being very mild and relaxed and dynamically providing power on the low end speeds, I got 74 miles on this, while it advertises between 50 and 60, which lends to the fact that if I stay on that low end and I don't go into the high numbers and tax the motor and tax the battery, if I stay on the low end and just kind of relax and cruise, you can get a long, good distance out of this. 70 miles is like 5 hours. It's a long ride. So you get a lot of good riding time out of this if you keep it relaxed. But then on the flip side, after I recharged it and went for a ride on max mode, so PAS5, that time I got 34 miles, so about half the distance, but that kind of makes sense because on that high end and the speedier numbers north of 15, 20 miles an hour, the bike is really punchy, really responsive, and it lets you kind of stay up with traffic and just kind of cruise fastly, which a lot of people will like, but obviously that's going to have more of a taxing effect on the battery and drain it faster. So what can you reasonably expect? Well, you can reasonably expect what you would probably get with a mix of those, which is how most people ride. Most people don't stay in eco, they don't stay in max, they kind of fluctuate between based on how their ride is going and where their day is taking them. And I would think that mixed use of the pedal assistance like that, not doing both extremes like I did, you can reasonably expect to get somewhere in that 50 to 60 mile range like they're advertising. I think it's pretty spot on. And I like the fact that they didn't stick it to just the eco range by saying, oh, you can get 75 miles if you keep it at a crawl. I just happened to get that because I went slow. So regularly using it, PAS 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, just mixing it up, yeah, 50 to 60 miles seems very, very reasonable. And knowing that I got 75 on eco mode is just a nice little peace of mind if you want to take it easy. Now to put this back, I'm just going to simply do what I did in the opposite direction. So we're going to put it in, slap that in place, take the cover, the little prongs go on the bottom side first, and there you go, you are locked in place and ready to ride. So let's talk components on the Mokwheel Tarmac. What are you getting equipped for your stopping, braking, and contact points? Well, back here in the rear, we're going to start with the drivetrain. This is an 8-speed Shimano Altus drivetrain. Now, that's going to be made up of the 8-speed Shimano Altus rear derailleur with the Shimano HG200-8 rear cassette, which is a cassette range of 12 teeth up to 32 teeth. And then on the chainring up front, you get 46 teeth. Now, that combination of a 46 up front with a 12 to 32 in the rear is kind of spot on for a commuter bike. It's not climbing mountains and it's not bombing hills all day, not staying perfectly on flats like a single speed. It's just enough range to give you kind of some flexibility and variability in your riding terrains. A little bit of inclines, a little bit of declines, a little bit of flats like most cities have, and this bike is definitely equipped to handle it without any kind of ghost pedaling issues. I thought it was really well set up there. Now, in braking terms, we have hydraulic disc brakes, both front and back, with 2-piston calipers and 180mm rotors. These are Tektro branded hydraulic disc brakes, and they do have motor cutoff switches in the brake alloy levers. Now, in terms of the saddle here, we have Mokwheel's branded comfort saddle. This is a leather saddle with some spring supports on the bottom. Super comfortable, very plush saddle. Not very wide, like awkwardly wide, but not super narrow like a mountain bike saddle. Just enough to give both of your sit bones lots of padding and room and space over like more of a performance saddle, but not so big that it's an awkward like beach cruiser saddle. I think this was a solid choice on the saddle position here. You can adjust it via this quick release lever, and it's really easy just to move up and down, and you get about 8 to 10 inches of moving ability here in the saddle. Now up front, we do have the suspension fork. This is an air fork, which is really cool. I keep saying it's really cool, and people probably wondering why. Now this first off has a lockout sensor. You can lock it in place if you need to prevent that from sagging at all, and you can unlock it to get that squish back. And then on the left side, you have your air valve, which is a Schrader air valve, just like you fill your tires with. You can fill the air pressure in the shock, and that's going to give you basically the amount of sag and rebound you're going to need to operate this based on your body weight. So the heavier you are, the more PSI you're going to put in here, and the lighter you are, the less you can have, which will give anybody based on their rider height, their body weight, the right amount of kind of feedback in that air suspension, which is much better than a coil fork because the coil fork has no adjustability in those terms. And so whatever it's rated at spring progressiveness wise is just what you're going to get regardless of your body weight. And a 150-pound rider will not have the same experience as a 350-pound rider, whereas on an air fork, based on how you fill that air pressure up, you can, regardless of your body weight, get a air suspension feel that works best regardless of what person is riding the bike, which is a very nice feature that just allows this bike to be tailor fit to a wider range of riders. Now up here in the front, we do have our cable management, which is all of them coming off of the controls wrapped into these consolidated wires here, and then internally routed to the bottom of the frame and then back to the motors and places like that. Now, in terms of this handlebar, we have an alloy bar with a slight rise to it, and then Mokwheel branded ergonomic grips with gel pads on them for your palm comforts while you're riding, and they're lock-on grips, which is nice because they're not going to spin and loosen over time. Now, this bar has a 31.8 millimeter bite for the stem, and then like I said in the beginning, this stem is 90-degree adjustable, so you can slam this forward at 90 degrees or bring it all the way up, and regardless of what you do, that's going to change how that bike rides and feels. Slam it forward, you're going to be more aggressive and forward. Bring it up, you're going to be more relaxed and upright. If you're shorter, you can bring it up for a shorter reach. If you're taller, you can push it out for a longer reach. That's just kind of the nice part of having that nice 90 degrees of adjustment in the stem here. Now, looking at the cockpit itself, we have alloy levers on both sides from Tektro that have motor cutoff sensors. In the right side, we have this kind of discrete bell, which I like. It's not really a big obnoxious one, but it gets the job done. Over here, we have our Shimano under the bar trigger shifters with a window so you can see what gear you're in. And then on this left side, we have this push throttle here with your thumb. We have our PAS control buttons for the display pad, and then we have this TFT display. So let's take a closer look at the TFT display because it's got some unique features as well as tons of customization options for how you ride the bike, which will be really important for some of you if you're new to e-bikes or you like to share your bike or you just want to be cautious as you start riding it. We'll cover some really cool details in here that's going to make that a little bit more clear. All right, guys, so this is the home screen on the Mokwheel 2.8-inch color TFT display. Now, that's a long-winded name, but it has a lot of cool features to back it up. Now, before I jump into the features, I am going to kill this real quick by showing you how you can detach the faceplate. Having a detachable faceplate is good for a couple reasons. One, depending on where you live, you may not want to park your bike out front with this thing that just advertises high-end e-bike or premium e-bike because people are going to see this and think, oh, this is kind of a nice bike. But if this is removed, it just takes that mental thing away. Or if you just want to take it inside for safekeeping, it's just nice to have the ability to remove it. So to remove it, there's just two tabs on the back. You'll see, I'll push them in and boom, it comes right off. To put it back in, I'll just hook this lip in and it turns, or it's connected right back where it should be. So I'm gonna have to turn the bike on one more time because we did kill it when we did that. And we get this little splash screen with Mokwheel's branding as it fires up. All right, now here in the home screen, we have the speed in miles per hour right here in the middle. We have the pedal assist level that we're on up at the top right. And as I hit up and down on the buttons, you can see that change. We have the battery indicator up top. And on either side of that, we will get turn signal indicators. So when I press the left button on the pad, you'll see the left turn signal turn on. Now I will caution you, I was filming and riding around town with this all week, and a couple times I turned it on and forgot about it, so I was that guy riding down the road with a turn signal on. So if you don't forget to turn it off, it's not going to turn off for you. So I'll just hit it again and that turns it off. Now when it comes to the just other metrics on the screen, if we look down here, we can see time in minutes on the bike, trip meters at 137 miles. But let's look at more of the advanced settings on here because there's a lot of really cool things you can tweak in the advanced settings. So first things first, let's hold the plus and minus buttons, and that's going to take us to the technical settings. Now, the technical settings are going to be things that are non-performance related, things about just the daily upkeep and maintenance of the bike. So you've got things like picking the right language for the display, which if we go into here, we'll see we have English, Dutch, French, Spanish, Italian, Netherlands, I guess that is, and then we will back out. So now we'll go down to assist level, and then here you can adjust things like having 5 levels versus 3 levels of pedal assist, which is just a personal preference. It won't change how the bike rides. It'll just change how many times you need to switch between assistance levels. So I'm going to back that out. Now we go down to voltage level. You can choose between a 36 and a 48 volt system. You can go to wheel diameter. Here's where you can change from the 29. Say you put 27.5s on here, which would require some other things, but nonetheless, if you changed your wheel diameter, you could change it here in the computer so you get accurate results and all the computations it's doing while you're riding. If you go to tacho magnets, this is where you can change the number of magnets on the cadence and torque sensor capabilities of it, which I will not be messing with. And then you can factory reset information down here, which I'm not going to factory reset it, but if you needed to, that's where you would do that. Now to back out, we'll just hit the back arrow one more time. And now we'll get into the next advanced settings, which is the performance settings. Now to get to the performance settings, you hold both turn signal buttons, and that will take you to the, function settings. I call it performance in my mind, but it's actually labeled function settings. Now here you're going to get other things like some display related stuff, and then basically the rest of it's going to be performance and technical. So let's go into brightness here. You can see by going to this, we have auto brightness, or you can pick 1, 2, and 3 levels depending on how bright it is where you're living and what you like personally. You can go down to units. This is where you can change between kilometers and miles per hour. You can go to throttle speed. This is a very cool feature that's going to allow you, I have it maxed out at 34 miles an hour, and like I said earlier when I was riding it, I was able to creep up to around 29, sometimes touching 30 miles an hour. But nonetheless, this is where you can limit the throttle. A lot of people don't want to go that fast on throttle, so maybe you want to keep it based on your local laws. You want to keep it more along 20 miles an hour, which is where most cities require that to be set. And you can put it right there and walk away. You're legal, you're good. But it's good to know that if you have some public land or areas where it allows for that extra speed, you can take the throttle up to basically 30 miles an hour, which is really cool. So I'm going to back out of this and go to assist speed. Now in here, you can change the assistance speed limits at each level. So say, for example, I'm in PAS1, and right now, PAS1 tops out at 17. But what if you had a younger person riding it, or you were new to this and you wanted just a safer, slower ride? Well, then you could bring PAS down to be no more than, let's just say, 8 miles an hour. And then now PAS1 will be stuck at 8 miles an hour. And you can do that for every level of pedal assist and just dial in a speed profile that works for whatever your situation is, which I think a lot of people will appreciate. So I'm not going to go through all those, but you get the idea. You can make a custom speed limit for each of these, or you could max all of them out, or you could dial all of them back. It's totally up to you, and that's a nice safety and just kind of comfort feature for people. Now down here in the intensity settings, this is another favorite of mine that I think right now only Mokwheel is doing, and I wish other brands would do it. I think it's a really cool feature. So we know we have 5 levels of pedal assist, and we know we can limit each to a certain speed limit. But what we can't limit so far is how punchy and aggressive this bike accelerates, how punchy and aggressive it gets up to speed and moves and throttles. That's just kind of programmed in there for most bikes. But on this bike, I'm gonna have to go back in, hold the 2 turn signal buttons, go down to intensity settings, and this is where you can change that intensity setting. So we'll go in here, and it's going to be a scale from basically 1 to 5. So 1 is going to be the most mild and reserved version of it. 2 is going to be a little bit better. 3 is going to be that middle of the road. 4 is going to be punching a little bit higher, and 5 is going to be maxed out. It ships at 0.3, which is kind of the good middle of the road. But if you're new to this, or you're concerned about it, or letting a friend or family ride it and they're concerned, punch it down to 1 so everybody gets a more relaxed experience and nobody's surprised by the power or acceleration. But just a cool feature I thought I'd share. Down here, you can go to riding modes, which is going to be, you can change it to where there's only pedaling on this bike, or you can have only motor on this bike, or you can have both pedal and motor, which is a true e-bike, which is why I leave it right there. Now here in startup mode, you can have free mode or safe mode. Down in fault check, you can find any errors that are on the screen right now. Maybe you're talking to service and they asked if there's any errors. Here's where you'd find those. You can go to reset trip meter, and then you can see the version information, things like the what type of software and hardware on your components that you have. And that's going to be it in the function settings. So that makes up all the advanced settings, both the basic settings and the function settings, or technical settings and function settings. And really, as you see, a ton of ways to customize this motor for whatever riding experience you're looking for. And I really like the color display. It's modern looking, it's clear, and even in direct sunlight, it just looks really good. Plus, being detachable, it's just another safety feature you can add to it. All in all, really nice setup, and it's performed really well. All right, guys, we're out here on the Mokwheel Tarmac. And this is Mokwheel's latest commuter, and I think this pretty solid job by Mokwheel all around. Kicking things off when you get on it, you've got a nice flat bar up front here. You've got a really comfortable, cushiony seat. And what that does is that with a 90-degree stem adjustment. So you've got 90 degrees of adjustability in the stem, so I can bring that reach back and give myself a more upright posture, something that's more comfortable to ride every day, especially for a commuter. But if I want to slam that stem forward, I can have a more aggressive riding position if I want. So you've got some flexibility there, which is really cool too. Let's talk about the power on this. So we've got a 750 watt motor with 920 peaking watts and 75 Newton meters of torque. And on top of that, we have 29-inch wheels, which we don't see often in this segment of like direct-to-consumer e-bikes. They're generally 27.5s. And so Mokwheel kind of took a bold step and went with 29s. And having that larger wheel diameter, to me, makes riding just a little bit easier. It feels a little bit better on the road. That might just be personal bias because I'm used to riding bikes with 29-inch wheels or 700C, you know, road and gravel wheels. But these just feel good to me, and I like the height, the stance that it gives it. But I'm kind of just cruising right now, but let's do some cool things they have on the customization side, which as we went into the display, you can kind of see, but essentially we can switch between cadence and torque sensor. We can limit speeds at every level of pedal assist, or we can unlimit any speed at every level of pedal assist. We can choose how intense the motor acceleration is along with the power. You have a lot of control over every aspect of how the bike is moving. But let's keep it in PAS5. There we go. And let's just floor it and see how we do on this little 9% incline coming up ahead. See how much speed we lose, and then we're going to continue it going into the neighborhood up ahead. That's got a more sustained climb, about 5 to 7%. And we'll just see how the motor does with this power combo. So I'm just going to floor it. And so we're cruising up over 20, going up the hill. We did go down 2 miles an hour. So we went from 23 to 21 at the steepest part. And there's a sign as you go the other way that tells you that was a 9% grade. So on a 9% grade, we lost a little bit of speed. 2 miles an hour is pretty par for the course on most e-bikes we get. But now let's take it into the neighborhood and do the more sustained climb. It's a longer, like a quarter-mile climb, somewhere in the 5 to 7% range. It kind of varies. Let's do that one and see what kind of results we get there. Good. Thank you, buddy. All right, so let's just floor it. Throttle only, just want to see what it can do on this hill. And right now we're accelerating without any issues. The steepest part is up ahead around the corner here. Up there. But we're accelerating, we're not slowing down at all. We're not even holding a speed, we're pushing past speed. Still accelerating, and now we're getting into the steepest part. We're holding 24, 25, back to 24. So we're holding at 24, nope, 23. But we're definitely not losing speed. We're just kind of cruising and holding it. So I'm gonna use my turn signal here with the directional pad, turn into the neighborhood, which I love having turn signals on a bike when I'm riding on city streets. They illuminate on the rear rack taillight. So not only do you have a headlight, a taillight, but you have a braking feature. So when I apply my brakes, I not only get a motor cutoff for safety, but I also get a brake light, like highlight feature within the taillight. And then on each corner, we have turn signals. So really front to back, every style of lighting you're gonna want, which is another standout option, especially on a commuter where these bikes are designed to be on city streets. And so let's get going back down this hill. Let's get up to speed a little bit, maybe 25 miles an hour, and just hit these brakes. See how they do stopping. So there we are at 25, 3, 2, 1. So pretty good stopping power. Nothing overpowered for sure. I felt like it was pretty sufficient for the bike. No trouble stopping safely, even from a higher speed like 25 miles an hour. You got 2 piston calipers and 180 millimeter rotors. That's another kind of par for the course for most e-bikes these days. And I think it fits a bike like this pretty well. Now the motor despite having good power, you can hear a little bit of motor whine, just a little bit of motor noise, but on 750 watt motors, that kind of feels pretty average. When you have 350 watt motors, 500 watt motors, it's pretty easy to make those silent. But when you get to 750, 1000, it's definitely harder for brands to have a silent motor. So you can hear a little bit of motor noise on this one, but definitely nothing that's like overbearing, certainly not overly loud. It's just kind of there, and it's really only in like the acceleration parts when I'm trying to go full blast and speed up. But like right now, just cruising around, I can hear just a tiny bit of motor noise, but it's right there. Like when I really push on it, you get a motor noise. But if I just casually pedal and I'm just maintaining speed, it's pretty darn quiet. So let's talk about the suspension fork, because it's not often we get an air fork on these style of bikes, especially sub $2,000 like this. So air forks are just going to have a better feel. They have more adjustability options, and they're generally lighter, so you have less parts inside. You don't have that big coil metal spring inside. It's an air chamber. So while this is not a mountain bike, what does the front suspension fork do? Well, it's going to just it's going to take the edge off on bumps, curbs, things like that. It doesn't make the ride, it's not like a full suspension mountain bike, but it definitely takes the edge off when you hit any kind of road imperfections, speed bumps, things you're going to encounter in a city, things you're going to encounter commuting. And with the tires, you can still do a little bit of light off-roading, take the shortcut to work or school, and it's going to be just fine. You basically got a hardtail bike, flat bar, air suspension up front, 29-inch tires with some decent tread on them. I mean, it's going to give you the ability to kind of go where you want within reason. I wouldn't take it down a crazy mountain bike single track, but taking the shortcut to work, leaving the campground on your bike and just going exploring, this is the kind of bike you could still do it on, and I think it would be a good option. All in all, the bike just rides really nice. I love the customization within the motor. You can do everything from a little to a lot. You can go crazy or you can stay really mild. It's really up to you with all that customization, which I think is always a good thing. Because not everybody wants the same type of ride. Not everybody wants the same type of speed or acceleration. So it's just cool that they give you all those options. But let's go back and put it on a stand and talk about it from like an ownership standpoint, like a mechanic standpoint, things about servicing, maintaining, maybe things you didn't see on the website. So let's go talk about those now. All right, guys, so let's talk about the Mokwheel Tarmac, less of a kind of review standpoint and more of a, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to own it, but I've never touched it. What am I going to get when I get this bike home, and are there going to be any surprises? That's the stuff you guys probably want to know about, because you can't see everything on a website or in these reviews. So I try to point out the things that are a little lesser known, but might be of importance to you. So I'll start with the good. The good on this, there's plenty of good on this. The bike rides really nice. I love the 29-inch wheels. I love the fact that they went with an air fork up front with adjustability for your rider weight. That's just going to let you get a better experience regardless of who you are and what you weigh. You can dial in that air fork to get a comfortable ride. That's just going to be basically a much better experience than buying a bike with a coil fork. It's a small thing, but it goes a long way in terms of how the bike feels. Now, on top of that, I really like the frame integrated lighting. Now, that's not new. We've seen it on Aventon bikes before and some other bikes. But what we often see is either there's a light in the rack and you get nothing if you remove the rack, or there's lights here and you have nothing on the rack. But in this case, we have lighting on the rack and the seat stay frame integrated lights, meaning if you were to remove this rack, you'd still have some lighting features that are going to be seen by people. Just gives you more flexibility in how you want to kit out the bike, but still have those features that made you interested in the bike in the first place. So that was a good, smart design choice, having both sets of lights in place. And then on top of that, we got alloy flat pedals. We don't always get alloy pedals. They're generally plastic, and plastics will just get chewed through on pavement quicker. They will get beat up quicker, and you'll need to replace them a lot quicker. These alloys will last a lot longer, look a lot better for a long time, and unless you have a personal preference on a pedal, you'd have no reason to ever even really replace those, which is really cool. Now, on top of that, and one of the biggest things from an ownership and maintenance standpoint is full Shimano drivetrain. So Shimano Altus rear derailleur, Shimano HG200-8 cassette, 46 tooth chainring up front, 170 millimeter alloy cranks, and Tektro hydraulic disc brakes front to back. What that means, while I'm spitting out all those model numbers and brand numbers, is basically these are all parts you can find at your local bike shop or on Amazon and have them to your house within a day or two for a pretty pretty low price. These are not very expensive parts, but they're kind of workhorse parts that go a long way. And in the event you need to replace one or service one, anybody from your local bike shop, anybody from Amazon will have the parts you need. It's a very nice setup that's just easy to replace, and it's not going to break your wallet, but it's still kind of a good workhorse group set that will do the job for really most cases. On top of that, that's going to be like the really good features that just stand out to me. Oh, and the adjustable stem. I just glanced at that, but it's worth mentioning again. That adjustable stem, kind of like the air fork having adjustability, giving you adjustability in that reach and that rider position goes a very long way in how you're going to feel on this bike on long rides, short rides, and how you personally like it based on how your back feels, your flexibility. All that comes into play with an adjustable stem, because now you can really make it fit the way you need it to make it fit, not the way it comes fixed from the factory and then hope you can fit on it. You can dial this in to fit in a way that works best for you. Okay, so with the just kind of standout good things out of the way, let's talk about a couple things that could be improved on this bike. Now, right here, this has become something I focus on a lot lately because it's kind of hit or miss with brands. This is an area that you might be able to see it already, a little bit of scratching right there already, and that's because as you ride this bike, chain slap is just inevitable. You come off a curb, you go over a speed bump, you're on a cobblestone or bumpy road, you're just going to have chain slap on chain stays. This is called a chain stay of the frame. So what I'd like to see done to it from the brand is just putting a protective strip there. Sometimes they put a beefy rubber strip there. Sometimes they put a thin film piece there. But at the end of the day, anything that you can put there that's going to protect this paint job from that chain slap is going to go a long way in protecting the frame of this bike over the long term. Now, you can go on Amazon and buy some of these and then just glue them on or stick them on. You can get protective film and put them on. You can even get those beefy rubber ones that mountain bikes have. Either way, I would just say if you get this bike, spend the $2 or $3 from your local hardware store or hobby store and get something that's going to protect this chainstay. Very cheap and easy, but will go a long way in protecting that frame. All right, and then the other thing I wanted to point out for, not my favorite on here, while it looks really nice, this frame integrated headlight is kind of a proprietary design to this specific frame. You're not going to be able to, say you crash your bike, say it's been 10 years you've had the bike, and then all of a sudden the headlight goes out, and you're like, oh, let me just grab a new headlight. Well, this is kind of proprietary to this company. I don't think you can jump on Amazon and find a replacement light for this like you can the rest of the components on the bike. If this goes out, like I said, in 10 years, maybe when Mokwheel's not still housing these parts, they may still keep them on hand, but then you're kind of gambling on whether or not Mokwheel will keep those on hand. I would just prefer to see something that's more universal, something that's going to be more plug and play for anybody. Because if this does break down the road and Mokwheel doesn't have any more replacement parts on hand, like I said, say 10 years from now, then you're left having a broken headlight where you're clipping on a light. And I mean, I would just rather see something that is just going to be universal in design and easily replaceable or fixable down the road. But nonetheless, you have to have a pretty gnarly crash to break this. Just something to keep in mind though. You may never break it. It may just stop working after a long time. And then depending on whether or not they're still around, you may or may not have a part to replace it. It's a small fry. You can always go with a clip-on light, but it's something worth keeping in mind because it's very unique to this bike with this kind of frame design in place. Other than that, guys, there's a lot to really like on here, and there's a lot to kind of just keep in mind. I will point out one last feature on here. If you look at my seat post here, we'll put some images over the screen, you'll see some kind of harsh scratching, and that's because this one I was sent for testing. Down in the seat tube, there was a small metal burr that when I didn't know was there, so when I put the seat tube in and then I was adjusting its fit, moving it up and down, it created these like zigzag scratch marks. Now, is it a big deal? No, all I have to do is just put a file down there, file off that metal burr, which I've done already, take a can of black spray paint that alloy seat post again, and I'm good to go. But I thought it was fair not to cover that up for the purpose of the review and just show you that things can happen. That's something to keep in mind if it does happen when you order the bike. It's just something I thought I would share. But all in all, the bike is really well done, really fun to ride, and I didn't really have any major complaints. All right, guys, so there you have it, the Mokwheel Tarmac. I think, personally, I've seen Mokwheel come a lot of different models over the year. They've come a long way, and I think from the first time I rode their initial Basalt to something like this today, it just shows the evolution of Mokwheel and how they always get progressively better. And they're becoming one of those brands that I wasn't sure how they would do a few years ago, and now as we move forward, they just feel like they're getting better and better and better. Now this bike here, priced at $18.99, a really nice price point that's approachable for most folks, but still having lots of performance and features that you're gonna want. You're not giving up on anything for that $18.99 price. You get an air shock, you get 29-inch wheels, nice 2.3-inch wide tires. I got over 70 miles of range, and you can still expect anywhere between 50 and 60. And the gripes I had about it were pretty small. Once you factor in the commuter perks like full front-to-back lighting, the adjustable fit up top, the adjustable suspension, it just becomes a really nice package for a pretty good price. So if you have any questions about the Mokwheel Tarmac that I missed, drop them down in the comments and I will personally find that out and get back to you so you can have that info before you pull the trigger, or if you need help making a decision. And until the next review comes out, I'll see you guys out on the trail.